And I'll just share my screen. And I think we can get started. So, Mike, are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank everybody for joining today's session. We're super excited at the opportunity to be able to share some new and exciting solutions coming from the Ironsides technology team. So, the goal of today's meeting is to really just educate you folks in the marketplace on our newest module titled APA, which stands for Automated Productivity Analytics. Again, my goal here today is to give you a little bit of background about how we got here, to talk a little bit about how it works inside of an operation and what the setup looks like, what some of the value our customers are getting out of it. And then I'm going to hand it off to Mike Iverson, who's also on the phone, Dr. Mike Iverson, who's from Hatteras out of Detroit. Mike's a longtime customer of Ironsides. Mike uses both our APT and APA product. And he's going to talk about his experience of kind of implementing the tool, the problems that it solved in his operation, and really how he monetized the investment. So, at the end of the session, we'll certainly open it up for questions. It's a small group, so nobody needs to be bashful about asking any questions. And then if you like or want to learn more about anything that you see here today, certainly, reach out to me and I'd be happy to give you a one-on-one session and have some open dialogue about how it may work within your particular operation. Uh, so there's going to be two presenters today. Myself, TJ Forsyth. I'm the Vice President of Sales Solutions with Ironsides Technology. And like I mentioned, we have Dr. Mike Iverson, who's the Chief Information Officer from Hatteras out of Detroit. To share a little bit about Ironsides Technology for the folks that may not be familiar with who we are a Boston-based organization. If you can't tell from my accent, we were founded by Sean Zhang and Bill Riley back in 2007. I've been with the organization since 2014. We have a global presence, so we have both US and UK sales and support teams and have some strategic relationships. You may have heard about us in the marketplace from some of the OEMs like Canon, Xerox, Ricoh, Konica Minolta, all folks that have the opportunity to resell and redistribute our solution um, for their customer base. So in terms of, markets that we support in the print and mail industry, really it's anybody that's printing and distributing documents. So that could be transactional, that could be direct mail, publishing, implant, whoever is drawing down documents and having to put them through a manufacturing process. We have a solution set that can work and deliver value to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Our core product suite falls under what we call our North Star umbrella. And there's really two primary focuses for the product modules. There's a couple of acronyms I'm going to throw your way, so I'll get that out of the way. So APT, that stands for Automated Production Tracking, and APA stands for Automated Productivity Analytics. So APT, that really is where we get into providing our customers real-time visibility to their work in process across any piece of equipment. So we're device agnostic in that regard and have the capability to provide end-to-end piece level tracking, compliance, reprint automation, elimination of manual processes, really providing you real-time insight of what's going on inside of your operation. So we do a lot of piece level tracking work. We do some camera work. We help our customers consolidate information into a single source of truth from a production standpoint, and store that all within an open and accessible database that can be leveraged to, share information with third-party systems, third-party reporting portals. I'll talk a little bit more about how we get into that. And our newer product, APA, which is really the focus of today's conversation, is really how we take our core competency, which is, piece level tracking and data collection, and how do we apply business intelligence and um, enhanced productivity metrics to deliver not just value to where your job is and how is your job performing and how are your pieces accounted for. Now migrate the conversation into, am I running a productive shop? What are some gaps within my processes? And we're going to talk about what it looks like to get there. So, One of the things I like to do when explaining APA is kind of paint the picture of what it took to get here, right? So when Bill and Sean, who I'm sure folks are familiar with, started the business in 2007, I'd say the first 10 years of us being in business, we were very focused on the insertion and hand fulfillment side of things, right? So that was piece level tracking, that was installing cameras, that was leveraging existing cameras, that was working with customers so they would have a consistent integrity manufacturing platform for the documents that they were distributing. So it just so happened that, if you profiled a lot of our customers and people we did business with, it was very much focused on the insertion and hand fulfillment side of the business, right? Risk teams needed to make sure, you had an audit trail, SOC 1, SOC 2, HIPAA, FISMA, all type of audits that go into supporting a lot of those customers in the financial services healthcare space. That was the core of our focus. And then as the product continued to develop and evolve, we had customers engage us um, about, hey, how can you throw a net over my entire operation? I like what you're doing on the insertion and hand fulfillment side, but how can you really give me a more holistic view? So I would say back in 2007, and in fairness, it was probably a little bit before that. But we started to extend our tracking into other environments of the operation. So digital print and offset print equipment, right? So, we do some creative things with JDF, SNMP, IPP, whatever print protocol we need to utilize to access the devices. We're able to tackle that. In the bindery environment, we started doing sensor-based tracking on non-intelligent equipment. Anybody that's in manufacturing knows that kind of that middle place of the operation is generally the black hole and where there's the least amount of technology, right, in the manufacturing process. So we were able to tackle that. We've done a lot of integrations with other products in the industry. So accepting log files, you'll see a lot of equipment out in the marketplace that has a very pointed tracking solution to that piece of equipment. And, the customers have a need to take that up to the top level. So, we were able to tackle that. And the net result of that is not only could we ensure that your packages were going out compliantly and, without risk and elimination of manual processes. But we're also giving you a holistic view of what's going on at every piece of equipment. What are my people doing? Are they running effectively? Am I hitting my SLAs? Really, I like to describe it as the who, the what, and the where of your production, right? All of that information in real time. And we started to, understand from our client base that our ability to have that data be open and accessible was an extremely value add. So just as important as it was to get the documents out correctly, as was important it was to consolidate the data and what the customers can do with the data. So we were very successful in that regard. So, take us back to 21, 22, right? We had customers saying, I love what you're doing, but now, I got another problem I want you folks to solve. And that's how do you give me the why behind when my machines aren't running? You do a very good job of telling me when it runs, who ran it, how fast it took. But I really want to know, and I really want visibility to what's going on when my jobs are not running. So we started to shift our focus to machine downtime reasoning. Dynamic expected versus actual productivity. I use the analogy all the time. You can, there's pieces of equipment that can do a number 10, a 6x9, a 9x12, sheet feed, roll feed, multiple pockets, right? They all don't run at the same speed. So you can't just, like in the old days, say, hey, this machine is going to be 10,000 pieces an hour because you might hit that machine with different jobs that have different throughputs. And you want to be able to measure yourself versus your expected productivity. We had customers coming to us saying, "Hey, I'd like to, bring to light some statistics behind make ready, right? And how long is it taking me to get in a job and out of a job, and what's my job transition time, and how do I track primary versus secondary labor?" And really all of this, what we're doing is just parlaying off the data collection that we were already doing. And that's really the power of the APA tool that you're going to see is it's not, while it can operate as a standalone, it really works side by side with our core tracking methodology. And we needed to do this in a way that was easy to use and interface, right? So, you know, we hear the stories about manual spreadsheets, about, tons of paperwork, sneaker wear on the floor. Obviously in the print and mail environment, there can be a high level of turnover, right? We needed to make a product that was easily trainable, right? That you could onboard people. And that's really been our focus with the APA tool. So this slide right here, this is not to get too technical, and this is really just meant to paint a 500-foot view of what an installation looks like inside of a production facility. The core brain of what we do is within our server technology, right? So our APT and APA server, that kind of sits resident in a production facility or multiple production facilities. So we support enterprise environments. So if you have an East Coast, West Coast, Southern presence, we can tie the activity into one centralized portal. But we work off of what we call control files and GIF files. So any job that we're expecting to track, that needs to be submitted into the server environment, right? And that's usually coming from customer order management systems, file management systems. We have some customers that send it from 5 or 6 different systems. We're totally agnostic in that regard. Once that job is within the Ironsides platform, we then deploy our multitude of data collection methodologies to the production floor. So I think at our last count, we're about 185 different methods of collecting data out on the production floor, ranging from, in the print environment, it's generally API, right? Or getting directly into the controllers, to bindery, where you're talking sensors or log files, to, insertion is relatively straightforward. It's generally camera based or control file based, control platform based, and hand fulfillment. But we're tracking that job throughout the entire manufacturing process in real time. We're taking that information back into the brain and engine that we have, which is then driving the dashboarding, the device monitoring, the reporting, the productivity analysis, all from a real-time utility that helps operations and production teams manage their operation on a day-to-day basis. The secret sauce we feel behind, with our solution set is not only do we provide you that value within the product, but we also make that information available and accessible to you. So you can see the top level of this diagram here. We have many customers that are tapping into our database with their MIS systems, their ERP systems. They may overlay a Power BI, Crystal Report, Tableau reporting service. They may be tapping into the database to provide real-time transparency to their end customers. Again, that's the power of getting the data into one central place. So the story has really shifted from, hey, just make sure I get my packages out correctly, Ironsides, to a much greater story, which is provide me real-time visibility, provide me a level of comfort in my compliance, provide me the data in an open form, and provide my operations teams the tools to be successful on a day-to-day basis. And we think that APA is the final step of helping us get there, and we don't think we're done yet. So, APA, what are the focus areas, right? So we sat down with many of our customers, Mike being one of them, right? Many of our customers and just really inquired and listened to what some of the challenges they had on a day-to-day basis. And the reality was, they didn't know what they didn't know, right? So we would constantly hear stories of, man, I would really like a system that would give me the why behind my productivity so I can identify, okay, do I have a machine issue? Do I have a people issue? Do I have a process issue? Am I having an issue with a certain vendor and service calls? Am I seeing trends within my accounts and customers that need to get brought forward for a different level of discussion? What are some of the common trends I'm seeing out on the production floor, right? In addition to that, it was really understanding some of the core time gaps of what was happening when a machine wasn't running. So, how long is my make ready taking? How long is job transition time taking? Those are two low-hanging fruit figures in an operation that you want to get to a point of how do I make my, get as little make readies as possible. And when I do have make readies, make them as short as possible. And if you have less make readies, that means you have less job transitions, and that's more time available to essentially run your equipment efficiently. Scheduled downtime and reason for downtime was a huge thing that people wanted to know. They wanted to know when a machine goes down, why is it down? What does that look like from a holistic standpoint? Not just TJ showing up at an operations meeting the next day saying, yeah, I think I was down for 2 hours today. When in reality, it could have been 4.5 hours, whatever it may be. Time is money. We started to hear, after COVID and really after the whole paper issue that flooded our environment, our industry, folks had to shift the focus from raising prices, right, to how do I run leaner and improve my profitability by ripping cost out of my organization. So you can't just always increase price. It takes two to tango, right? So how do you make sure you're constantly taking costs out of your organization to maintain, a competitive nature and profitability? So, those are some of the key things, that APA is focused on. So, really we sell it as, and we provide it to our customers as really a journey, right? Whereas like the journey is first you have to get yourself to a point where you collect the data. So get all the data in one place, right? So be able to get that into one system. Provide customers the opportunity to analyze that data. So track and trend your key production metrics to figure out what's actually going on on the production floor. And while you're doing that, identify some key areas that you think need improvement, right, to get yourself to a more productive nature. Resolve those issues by could be purchases, could be process changes, could be customer discussions. It could be a plethora of things, right? Implement that and then have a tool to monitor it and then on to the next one, right? So that's the whole purpose of what the APA solution is meant to do. It's not to solve your problems. It's to help you solve your problems and give you the data in a real-time format to be able to make those decisions. So, again, and I promise I'm going to show you the software. A lot of people ask me in, you know, implementing APA, how hard is it? Like, what is it? Is this going to overtake my operation? Am I going to be able to do this? What am I looking at from a technical lift standpoint? It's actually quite easy, right? So there's really five major points or things you have to tackle when deciding to leverage the APA solution, right? Assuming the software and licensing is all squared away is first you have to, we need to establish how are we collecting the data from each one of these pieces of equipment. Well, that's our job, right? That's Ironside's job. We come in, we generally do an assessment, we come back to you with a plan of approach, and we tell you how we're going to collect the data on the pieces of equipment. Now, if you're already an existing customer, we're probably already collecting that data, just like we were at Mike's shop, right? Then we sit you down and we like to document the on-machine operator experience. So from when an operator logs into that piece of equipment to prepping a job, to running a job, to transitioning a job, to logging out, and everything that comes in between there, how do you want the operators interacting with the system? So we document that. Then we start to move down to facility setup. So we establish production schedule. So when are you staffed to run and when are you not staffed to run, right? Making sure the system understands that because there's a big difference between planned downtime and unplanned downtime, right? Unplanned downtime is an area of attack. Planned downtime is available capacity, right? So that's the deviation there and making sure we understand, what thresholds do we have established to the machine. So you might want to have a stop threshold a little bit higher on an inserter than you do on a printer, or vice versa, depending upon the piece of equipment. But you go device by device and we work with you on that. Then we work with you on setting up those attributes and those configurations. So, what in our world, a configuration is a different template, right? So, if you're running a number 10 envelope with 1 to 3 sheets, maybe you run this inserter at 12,000 an hour. If you're running a 9 by 12 envelope with, 4 to 8 sheets, maybe you run it at 7,000 an hour. Making sure we have all those things set up in the system so we can record and grade appropriately based upon the configuration of the job. And then the final step is, establishing your groups and your reasons. So what that means is, when you collect all this data, right, how do you classify what you're collecting? Is it a routine stoppage? Is it a preventative maintenance stoppage? Is it a lunch break? Is it a divert fix? Is it a PM? Whatever it may be, because what you're going to see is by setting all this up administratively, all you're really asking the operator to do is tell you why a particular machine stopped when they are instructed to tell the machines, when they are instructed to tell the system that a machine stopped, right? So it's all based upon the operator simply selecting from a set criteria that you as a business set up, which then drives all the big analytics behind it. So this is an example of what you're going to see when I pivot over to the software of what the operator experience is. So it's an easy to use GUI. It shows you the configuration. It shows you everything that's running. It shows you a historical view of what happened on that particular device. And I'm actually going to show you and simulate, if I was an operator, what it looks like when you use the solution. So the final thing before pivoting to the software is by going through the steps of setting the administrative side of your system up, which is not a difficult thing to do, but is a super important thing to do. You put yourself as a position to paint a picture of your operation for every minute of every day. You have windows established for planned and unplanned downtime. You have specific designations for any time allotted when nobody's logged into a machine. So, like a good example would be, well, TJ, you're talking to me about operators interacting with a piece of equipment. What if nobody's logged into that piece of equipment? Well, we have ways of logging that data. Generally, it's called a no work scheduled to run, but you as a customer get to determine what you want to name that. But we have that classification identified. We have all your on-machine processes identified. So, what do you do with a make ready? What do you do when you're running a job? What do you do when you job transition, right? So job transition is important. When you think about when you end a job, there's three things that can happen. There's either another job to run, which you would then go through the process you've been trained on. There's no work available to run. You log out of the system, or there's work available to run, but for some unbeknownst reason, you are not in a position to start to run that work. And that's where you start to put in some of the stop reasons and identify, am I waiting on material or whatever reason it would be that you're not able to run that work. And then you have planned and unplanned event logging. So that's your breaks, your training, your town halls, preventative maintenance, fire drills, however detailed you want to get, you can get. We generally tell our customers when first starting to use the tool, don't paralyze yourself, right? Don't paralyze your operators. Let's get some simple data, like when are you running, when are you not running, and why are you not running? And then you can evolve it over time because you're not breaking anything, right? You're just tracking and logging data. So it's a constant migration of evolving the solution. And if you do all these things, you now have a picture of every minute of every day, right? When are things running? And if they're not running, why aren't they running? And when they are running, what did it run? How did it perform versus expected versus actual? And you take all this data and you analyze it and you figure out where am I at, right? And there's a lot of different avenues to look at. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you just very quickly, and again, anybody that wants to see the solution from a product demonstration standpoint, we'll be sending follow-up notes out to you to, engage to see if you want to see any more of this. But some of you folks who are existing Ironsides customers may be familiar with this portal, okay? This is our centralized dashboard. What I want to do is show you physically what the on-machine process looks like. Before I do that, just to touch on a few things within the system. So, the stop reasons. When I talk about the operators making selections, right? This is an example of how you as a customer get to set up what does the operator have to select from. So there can be certain stop reasons that are associated to certain pieces of equipment, right? That's what that kind of looks like. From a device setup, this is where you get to determine on a device by device standpoint, how many seconds do you want a machine to be idle before something pops up telling them what to run? So you get to, telling them what to input. So you get to set that up. You get to set up configurations and say, hey, here's how fast a particular job may be running. So this is when I talked about some of the system setup stuff. This is all what happens in the background. So by the time the operator goes to run a particular job, right? it's actually quite easy for them, right? So this may be a normal screen that customers see when they're running the job. And then you see this productivity metric here. Now you can see we're constantly journaling what's going on at this piece of equipment. One of the things I'm going to do now is I'm going to institute an actual stoppage, right? To kind of simulate, let's say I set this piece of equipment up to say, hey, when I hit 100 seconds of non-production, I want there to be a prompt to tell me, why did this machine stop? So I'm going to simulate 100 seconds passing. You can see that this red device, this red prompt pops up here. The operator needs to then select, okay, why did this machine stop? Okay. Now this is not a pre-canned drop down. This is to take you back. This is exactly what you set up within the system when you were an administrator, right? So let's say I select, okay, I this machine stopped because let's say I had to fix diverts and I'm logging that information, right? So I have to fix diverts. And then I go back to the job working page and let's just say, again, I'm doing this for demo purposes. Let's just say a new job starts to run. You can see that you're in run mode again. So as soon as you're in a stop state, as soon as we see the machine start to run again, we're automatically going to transition that into run mode and rinse and repeat as you go through your days. So I'll introduce another stop into the system just quickly, and I'll say, okay, I had to stop this piece of equipment because of um, equipment downtime, just as an example, right? But then let's say, you know what? I'm actually going to introduce a different activity like hard downtime. So this machine's going to stay in hard downtime until I see the next activity at that piece of equipment. So by all of this selection down at the device level, what I'm trying to do here is paint a picture of the net result of collecting all that information and that administration setup is to get the powerful data that comes within our APA solution, which is here, which is where you can start to track and trend your customers, right? In your job and piece data. That's a common thing. We hear that, hey, job counts are going up, piece counts are going down, right? What does that mean? That means more make readies, that means, more job transitions. And why is that? And maybe there's an opportunity for you to consolidate paper stock, consolidate envelopes, go to a read and print solution, do something, right, to take those 7 jobs and turn them into one production job, right? Some people may not have the data behind them. You also can start to take a look at, particular downtime reasons by device. So within the APA system, you can take a look at any piece of equipment, and I'm running this demo on my laptop. So my laptop is acting as a server. But you can take a look. Actually, let's take a look at the productivity analysis here. You get an OEE dashboard, right? That's going to show you, how a particular machine is running versus, operational effectiveness. You can get downtime reason and activity reason by device. So if you want to take a look at a particular device activity, you can do that. Once it clicks over to it. So over any granularity, you can say, okay, over a certain day, week, or month, I want to look at a particular piece of equipment for which I'm tracking, and I want to see what was the downtime associated to it, right? Um, you get all this information kind of at your fingertips. You can have these automatically emailed to you. You can use it from an analysis standpoint, and you also get the raw data behind it. So you can start to see over a certain period of time what happened at that piece of equipment. Scheduled downtime, when was it running? Essentially, anything that's scheduled downtime, that would be where you say, "Hey, I'm not paying anybody to or employing anybody during this time period." So to us, that's kind of available capacity. One of the other things you get from the solution is you can actually start to drill down from a management perspective. We've kind of tied this in that you can actually go to the dashboard and you can actually see what's going on in real time. So any piece of equipment for which we're tracking has a home on this dashboard, and you can simply drill into it, and you can see what's going on at that piece of equipment, right? What's going on per shift? All this information is there. So not just waiting until the next day, but also, just taking a quick look of what's going on from a, production standpoint. One of the things I'll do is I'll also show you some of the other, reports. So, make ready analysis. So we feel like make ready is low hanging fruit. So we've broken reports out by device, by operator, by job, by account, by class, by type, by number of inserts, top 10 make ready. I mean, I could probably spend 2 hours just going through the reports. And for anybody on this call, I'm happy to do that. But I really want to hit home that not only do we have our own reports, you get the raw data. So if you have Power BI, Tableau, and just want to leverage the tables and build your own dashboards, so be it. We have a lot of customers that do it and they're very successful with it. That's one of the things that makes Ironsides different, right? A long time ago, we decided that, we needed to have three main criteria to make us different, right? We needed to be open, we needed to be agile, and we needed to be agnostic, right? Those are the things that when we develop products and we provide solutions to the industry, those are the things that separate us from some of the other folks that you may look at. So, there's obviously products and reporting tools out there, right, that can, do reports, but can you do job visibility, SLA management, piece level tracking, reprint automation? We do all this stuff under one hood. To go back to the reporting, you can start to take a look at make ready by a particular device. So, how many make readies, what's the average make ready per job? Perhaps I want to drill down to the particular jobs that ran on the 3500 as an example. So you can see here's how long the make ready took. This is where you start to see like a number of inserts or paper stock. Are there other contributing factors, right, that are, preventing me from, being efficient. We have throughput analysis, just like we have make ready analysis, we have throughput analysis. So we measure that on the operator, the account, the device level over again, any granularity, any date range that you would like. So you can go into the 3500 again and say, okay, what was going on here? All right, I'm supposed to run this job at, 12,000 an hour. I ran it at 10,700, and then you can start to drill into, what was the why behind what happened during this run. You can start to get into some of the forensics, right? And benchmarks that you need. We have rate analysis as well. So when you want to take a look at a certain rate by device, um, again, I'll use the 3500 as an example. You can start to take a look at the previous speeds, like a lot of information at your fingertips to figure out what's going on the production floor. And these views are all customizable down to you, right? The user. So the system, when you purchase this, there may be different people looking at different pieces of information. So your views, your licenses, when you buy the APA, you can have unlimited users, right? All with different entitlements of what they can and can't see. So it's not, these views are specific to the user that's logged into the system. So if you only want to see the printers, you can only look at the printers, inserters, so on and so forth. So, I think the last thing I want to kind of show you is our ability to provide a time card from a device and operator perspective. So, you can start to take a look at, particular operators over a period of time and kind of what they're doing, right? And what they're not doing. Um, Manual intervention, maintenance, material management, downtime. You can look at it from a device standpoint. And again, different people have different angles, right, of how they analyze this data. But our goal here was to, again, we were always very, very good at telling you where a job is, what's running right now, how fast is it running right now, but we couldn't fill in the gaps of when it wasn't running. And that's where the opportunity lies. The APA module is to bring to light that data. So that's really the premise behind what we're doing. But really enough from me. What I'm going to do is transition over to Mike, and I'm gonna really let Mike just talk about his overall experience. So, Mike, I'm driving the PowerPoint. Certainly, I'll try to keep up with your narrative, but if you need me to toggle back and forth, um,
Okay.
happy to do it. But I'm passing the baton to you, my man.
Okay, it sounds good. Um, Hi, I'm Mike Iverson. I'm the CIO of Hatteras Printing. We are a small printer that's located in Plymouth, Michigan, and we specialize in transactional print and mail as well as general commercial printing. Um, but that's really enough about us. Let's go on to, our experience with Ironsides. Um, about 4 or 5 years ago, we installed an Ironsides system, and we used it to automate our production piece tracking for our transactional mail. Um, it basically it gave us actually incredible system to allow us to ensure that every letter went through our shop once and only once. And it also allowed us to completely automate our reprint process. And we've put some systems in place since then that have really cut down the amount of time it takes to get any kind of non-conforming material back through the process and back out onto into the mail stream. So, our experience with Ironsides is really great. When we had this reporting module that could tell us exactly what was wrong with our operation, and that was really helpful. I mean, we have efficiency problems in our inserting department. We have all sorts of inconsistencies in that area. But one thing that it really didn't do a great job of telling us is why we had those problems. And, we really we were struggling on a operational level of getting enough pieces out the door. And, we really have no idea why. So, it didn't, and not being able to tell us how to solve that problem was a big issue. So next slide. Once I figure out how to get there. Okay. So, what we were really overwhelmed by the amount of data that was presented to us. Um, Interpreting those reports out of Ironsides was really a challenge for our production team. And the one thing that our production team certainly did not lack were a plethora of opinions. And you know what people say about opinions? Everyone has one, and most of them stink. Um, so, most production managers have really gotten where they are in their career by relying on their own intuition, which is good enough for most situations. They know pretty much what the right thing to do and make a good enough decision. But that's really not good for teasing out root causes from a complex data set. And and that really led us into this cycle of inconsistent thinking. Whereas, our production managers were throwing out ideas. Well, it was the operators. It was the last week. It was the equipment, and before that, it was the setup of the equipment, and then it was the envelopes or the material that was coming into the equipment. And we just kept churning through all these different reasons, and we really and none of the fixes they put into place made any lasting difference in our operations. And so we just basically had a bunch of bad takes on interpreting the data. And, so our team was really chasing their tails and using hunches and, to try to figure out what our problems were. Um, but, these issues can be resolved by using some real concrete facts. I have a lot of experience with production monitoring methods like OEE and downtime analysis, and I've seen them make a difference. I spent 10 years doing this early in my career, um, but I'm now in a position where I'm not in the front line, so I have to try to influence the the production shop floor staff to achieve the goal. And I was often feeling like I was pushing a rope. So, our operators just didn't have the experience in these, modern production techniques. And I tried to introduce some basic downtime tracking, but it's only as good as the data they entered. And if you're not constantly monitoring them, they just sort of stop entering that data. And then they just they don't see the value from it, and then the whole program sort of fizzles. So I was really excited when Ironsides called me and said, "Hey, we got a new product called APA that that'll basically leverage all the equipment you already have on your shop floor and allow you to gather this information." And so we jumped at the opportunity. Next slide. Um, we made a decision to install APA in our environment. And I have to say, it was a really good decision. The installation could not have been any easier. We had a few meetings where we had to basically come up with what we believe to be our honest 100% production rates for each piece of equipment if it was running perfectly in an ideal situation. And then we had to decide on a bunch of downtime categories. And there was a lot of hemming and hawing over that. But, at the end, we just decided, hey, let's keep this thing simple. We have put enough categories in there to cover a range of opportunities because we can always change it. So, again, if there's something specific we need to focus into, we can go in there and change the categories appropriately, and then we can study something else. So in the end, we picked some basic categories and, that's where we went forward with. And then Ironsides came out to our facility for the big install, and they basically had the system up and running inside of a day. And that included 8 pieces of equipment, and we had it all up and running. And their team hung around for the next few days to basically be sure that everyone on all our shifts, all our operators were trained in how to use the system, and all the managers were trained in how to use it as well. And, you know, all in all, it wasn't a huge lift for us because we already had an APT system on the floor. So feedback was very positive, and it took almost no additional time for the operator to enter their downtime reasons into the system. And but more importantly, they didn't have a choice as far as whether they wanted to enter that system. So they would always be gathering that data, whether they liked it or not. And that was really the goal because these systems tend to fizzle out when people just start stopping doing it or shortcut the process. And enter data they did, and that really made a big difference. Next slide, please. Um, it was sort of this is actually I was truly shocked at this because I've seen these systems work before and how quickly we were able to come up with some meaningful data. So in less than 2 weeks from the time they installed everything, we could see all the same problems we had before. We had machines that were at 80% OEE, and then they were down as low as 30% OEE. And we could see the bottlenecks in our production process. But unlike the previous system, where we could see why we were having these problems, and to not delve too deep into the issues, we could see what was inhibiting our throughput. I mean, we could see we had inconsistent folding issues for a given job construction, which led us to basically change the equipment and the changeover process and alter our process and improve it. And we could see some real maintenance issues that would rob operators of 15 minutes of time every hour. So that was they were just burning time from there. Next slide. So, just to summarize in general, APA allowed us to pretty much quickly identify problems, prioritize those problems based on their severity, and evaluate the quality of the solutions that our team proposed. And we could evaluate those solutions in a matter of a few days and determine whether the fix we made was a success or not. And the biggest single item that it showed us that we had a serious maintenance problem. So we had machines that were altogether unreliable for certain tasks, and our maintenance staff had, they talked a good game, but they were very focused on keeping the machines running, but not really focused on keeping the machines running well. So they were based on the given state of a machine. We would get wildly different productivity out of that machine, and the operator would get frustrated because they're fighting the machine all day. So we tried an experiment. We took the worst performing machine, had the manufacturer come out and overhaul that machine. And instead of fixing only what was broken, they replaced what was worn or what's going to be on its way out or soon to be on its way out on that machine. And we could immediately see the throughput and quality gains on our reports. And, that really was an eye opener because we had visibility all the way up to the senior management that, oh, hey, this is making a difference. And that led us to completely change how our maintenance department was operated and allowed us to sustain these gains and hold these gains. And it really justified our entire APA purchase right then and there. Next slide. Okay, here it goes. Um, so let me move back to the human factor of it a bit. I mean, we talked about trying to get operators to participate in the process, and we sort of had to force them to, you have no choice but to enter your downtime information. And we were sort of worried that the operators were not going to want to do that, and that was going to be you know, a long-term grievance with them in some way or shape or form. But we really couldn't have been more wrong. And because once they saw that the data that they were entering was giving management good data on what the problem was, and when you included them in the solution process, they could see that all of a sudden their job got easier and better, and they could hit their numbers just by gathering this information and feeding this data back into the whole process. So they became believers in very quickly. They felt empowered, and they felt their concerns were being addressed. Something I learned a long time ago was that 99% of people want to come to work every day and do a good job. The 1%, they're going to go screw off, but they're the exception rather than the rule. But when these people come in and want to do a good job, things get in their way. It might be equipment, it might be systems, it might be just general problems. And it's the job of managers to listen to their team and resolve those problems. And the best way to listen to them is to use cold, hard facts rather than guesstimates and your intuition. And Ironsides has given us an excellent objective way to accomplish this. Next slide. And the net result of all of this is we are able to basically hit 80% or uptime or better on our equipment. And we can basically take, measure our those process improvements quickly and see conclusive results and whether it's effective or not. And we can also, by prioritizing the relative magnitude of the problems we're seeing, it allows us to solve the problem that's going to bring the best bang for the buck in our operation, rather than whatever person's pet project they would like to have us resolve. So that's really been a huge benefit. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about what we learned about how to be successful with APA. As I've mentioned a couple times here before, it's the job of managers to listen to their teams and resolve the team's problems. And you want to have a clear direction from the top of the organization, from the very top of the organization, that there's going to be a new way of doing business, and to be sure that's communicated down the chain of command. And while this direction comes from the top down, that's the only thing that should be coming from top down. The ideas should be coming from the bottom up. So your operators are really the only people who have profound knowledge of what it's like to operate that piece of equipment every day, and they know what the problems are. And what you want to do is use APA as a way to communicate that in an unbiased fashion to your managers to basically act upon that data and have the operators be part of the solution, because they know what's wrong with the machine, and they'll have if they give them let them have a stake in the solution process, it's going to be better. Then the one next thing is you need to build a data-driven culture. I mean, don't let egos and opinions get in the way of making the whole company better. And by having your team look at the facts found in the data and listen to everyone's ideas on how to get it better is going to lead to a better solution than relying on the a certain middle manager's ego. Um, and then the last thing to do is to try to sustain the process. And it's really keeping focus on the process and train managers and operators to use these methods effectively. And these methods don't always come naturally, and make them part of a daily routine will help sustain them, whether it's a bi-weekly meeting, a shop floor meeting, or a daily stand-up meeting on the shop floor. That can really help sustain these kind of operations. And if you can do this, APA gives you really an excellent objective way to improve your bottom line.
Thanks,
And
Mike.
next slide, no problem. And just to finalize here on the last slide, we're not really done with APA. I mean, we're just starting this journey, and we're looking to roll it out to other areas of the company, and we're looking at at receiving preventive and predictive maintenance reminders, and and logging our maintenance activity into the system. So we're looking at other integrations for APA and other business systems, and that's just wanted to come here and share our successes. And that's thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Mike. And just one comment, and I'll stop the share, and then I'll open it up for questions. But one of the things that we pride ourselves here at Ironsides is really listening to our customers. So Mike's team actually came to us and said, "Hey, I got a little bit of a problem. I wonder with all the data that you're collecting and the connectivity to your pieces of equipment, can you help me solve?" And that's around maintenance and preventative maintenance schedules. So we are working on some software that Mike is betaing for us again, which is giving his maintenance manager the ability to see what are the daily and routine tasks that need to get accomplished. If you need to change a belt every 100,000 cycles or whatever the metric is, having our solution track that and send alerts and track the overall preventative maintenance schedule. And again, I think that just speaks to the constant uptime of the equipment. Um, helps you be more productive. So we really have shifted our focus into solving real day-to-day problems and opportunities that have high level of impact. So it's down and dirty. It's on the production floor data collection, but the net result of that is very powerful data. So what I'm going to do now is if anybody does have a question, there is a raise hand function just so it's not a free fall. If anybody would like to ask any questions, I'll leave this open for a couple minutes. You can ask anything that you want. We're pretty transparent people. Looking at the attendee list, I think I know a lot of you personally. So if there's any questions, certainly let us know. And we'll give it a couple minutes here. And if we don't see anything, we'll cut everybody loose. Oh, Bill has a question. See if I can figure this out here. All right. I'll start with Dawn. Go ahead, Dawn. I unmuted you. Uh-oh. No, I didn't unmute you. Let me see. Dawn, are you there?
Yeah, can you
All
hear
right,
me?
we're here. We're with you now.
Okay, so I had a question. The information that you're able to capture by client, has this driven, I guess this is kind of for Mike, has this driven any pricing that you've had towards particular clients, based on
It
under,
hasn't, yeah, it hasn't in my case. We do a lot of commingling of our clients' different mail, so that hasn't been on the forefront of our of are the data, the problem that we're actively trying to seek to solve. But I can see where that would be because we have to look at, we see that more in sort of in products that we sell. That, like, for example, like say we're doing hand fulfillment, and we can look at the rates of that hand fulfillment and use that to drive, pricing to be sure our pricing is in the right place.
Right. Yep. Thanks.
No problem.
Bill, I'll take you off mute. If you had a question, I think you raised your hand. I'm not sure.
I'm good, TJ.
Are you good?
Yep. Thank you.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Mike.
No problem.
I'll leave it open for 30 more seconds, and if not, yeah, good job, Mike. Appreciate you always helping us tell the story. And like I said, for anybody that would like a one-on-one session, certainly happy to do this. We're going to record this, put it on our social outlets. But I think, oh, we got a question from Paul. Paul, you are off mute and ready to roll.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Hey, Mike, real quick question for you. How are you? So obviously, you can have so many seconds before it automatically goes into downtime on a machine, but how about hand processing and remake and stuff? What are you doing in that environment? Anything automated in regards to that, or is it all manual?
Well, for as far as hand inserting, it's pretty much our hand inserting is just that. It's hand inserting. So we don't have enough volume of like flats, for example, to justify a piece of automated equipment to insert those. But we have a steady enough volume that we have to manage that. So when we can see their productivity on how the hand inserting is working. Our reprints are fully automated, so we have each piece serialized, and Ironsides feeds back the information about what letters needed to be reprinted out of a given file, and that allows us to regenerate those into a new print file, which actually goes to a different piece of printing equipment because it can be so we can turn it around faster. Does that answer your question?
A little bit. Also, I guess really it was more around so like on a machine, if you set it to 100 seconds, that it automatically changes its mode, if you will, to some sort of downtime that's not counting against the operator, or maybe it is. How about in hand processing? How are you changing
It's basically the
operating
same
status?
the same rules apply for both downtime. I think we set the threshold initially at about 5 minutes. That was if it's less than 5 minutes of downtime, it's not super critical for us to track. And it's just that's an arbitrary number. I mean, we can make it 30 seconds, but then that becomes a burden on the operator. So there's a balance between how granular does the information be versus hey, I'm getting information that's good enough, versus for us to get a good idea and see what our problems are, and we can improve upon it there. So I think we settled at about 5 minutes. That anything above 5 minutes needs a justification, and anything beneath that really doesn't.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. Because again, what we can do is, like, if you're, at some point, you can just see the pieces per hour that you're getting on a given machine. And if it's more than 5 minutes, that means there's something significant happened that it is, driving a downtime. And that is arbitrary.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Well, everybody, thanks for joining. We'll send out a recording of this. And again, Mike, on a personal level, thank you very much for helping partake in this.
No problem.
Talk to everybody soon.
Thank you.